Welcome to Our Certain Point of View, where your hosts, Jim and Tim, will bring you new weekly discussions about the Star Wars universe. Our Certain Point of View is a fan-based podcast and has no connections with Disney, Lucasfilm, or any of their subsidiaries.
All right, we're recording. And
Yes, we are.
Hi, I'm Jim.
And I'm Tim.
And this is Our Certain Point of View, and we are here to recap the final chapter in Season 1 of The Mandalorian, Chapter 8. What was it called?
Redemption.
Redemption. I wonder why it was called Redemption, Tim.
I hope we find out somewhere here.
I bet we will. This is probably going to be like a 4-hour podcast because I have so much to say. And before I say any of it, I think what we should start with is, if you haven't gone back and listened to our History of Mandalore podcast or our History of Lightsabers called This Podcast Is Your Life, you might want to. Because, man, there is so much history in this episode that's just kind of nodded at and hinted at. It's a lot of Mandalore.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because I actually had, before anything, I had the exact same thing written over here.
To go back and listen to those episodes?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and if you like those episodes or the episode you're about to listen to, please, as always, we ask that you leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or whatever listening service you use. It is how we grow the program. We really do rely on those, so thanks to those of you who have done that, and thank you to those of you who are going to do that. Not much news to get into. I kind of want to just launch into the exercise. We do got to say our thank yous to Gordon and Arden.
We do have one piece of news.
What?
This is rumored as far as I know.
Actually, there's a lot of news, but I was too lazy to... You go with yours. Let's see if you got what I got.
I've got the Obi-Wan Kenobi series.
Okay.
And I'm going to do a 3, 2, 1 in a second after I say this. That's going to be a spoiler, so if you don't want to hear anything about Obi-Wan Kenobi...
What if I don't want to hear it?
You'll want to hear this.
Oh, okay.
Others might not. I'm interested in hearing this, and you know how anti-spoiler I am. So
You are anti-spoiler.
I think it's okay. So I'm going to say it, and then we're going to move past it. I'm going to give that countdown, and then I'll say it. 3, 2, 1. They've started casting for a young Luke Skywalker.
Ooh. Well, now I know.
Yes, you do.
Well, darn. Anyway, so... Very good. So that is some news. The other news I had, darn, I wish I had written it in my notes here, but we are going to do a season recap, and when we do, I'll definitely make sure I get into kind of Star Wars news in general, because I cannot remember what... I was so excited about this, too. Anyway, you got anything else before we head into the countdowns? Want to say thanks again to our friends in the Netherlands and in the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom is caught up with the Netherlands, and Belgium has joined the fight. Actually, we're all over Europe, Australia, New Zealand, but these are just our leading countries right now, and it's really
I'll tell you
neat.
what, Pennsylvania, Philadelphia has been big on listening.
Heck yeah! So we want to say happy holidays to everyone. We're recording on December 30th, so we have passed the Christmas holidays. I believe it's the end of Hanukkah now, and we're about to head into New Year's. So. Happy holidays to everyone.
All right, so I've got one more little fun piece of news, and this is a personal piece of news that I hadn't told you about yet, but I thought it was enjoyable.
And by the way, if you can't tell, we're recording at separate locations, which is the second time we've done this, so this probably sounds a little weird. But go on, Tim, what's your news?
Yeah, but I like it. So I was online, and I don't get into a lot of the debates with people.
No, he doesn't.
And this was referencing Rise of Skywalker.
It was.
And the only piece that I posted was that the front page of the discussion they started was kind of spoilery.
No, we're not doing any spoil. Yeah, that's been a problem, and we're not doing any spoilers, right? Because some people listening to this might not have seen the movie yet.
No, we are not going to spoil anything Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
So I got on there and I said, "This is a beautiful image." It was on a Lego site. I said, "This is a beautiful image because they created this Lego thing." I said, "But it's kind of spoilery." That's all I said. Beautiful, but spoilers. And that started people off. It's been over a week. People should have seen it, this and that. And I was like, you guys...
We couldn't even get the podcast recorded because of the holidays.
That's what I said. I said it's holiday time. Like, people have family in town, or maybe they're waiting until they got their Christmas gift cards or whatever else. So here was the fun part. Because I posted that. I was like, this is what's going on. There was one person that got on, and this was my favorite one. It said... Tim, you're a fake fan. You should have seen it by now.
You are a fake fan. You've
I
been
am.
found. We've been made.
I'm a fake fan. So,
We've been made, Tim. Time to
I
dump the
was like, well,
podcast.
that's it. That's it.
Nice.
This was all for nothing. We've been
You
doing
fake
this to try to
fan.
trick everyone all along because I don't really enjoy the series. I'm a fake fan.
You've gone a long ways to fake your fandom. That's what I'll say.
And to go as far as, so that everybody knows what I mean by I don't get into arguments. Yes, I've seen the movie a couple of times now. No, I did not post that in response to this person because there was no reason to.
Right. Engage.
Right. But it was a fun piece of information. I am a fake fan of Star Wars.
You're a fake fan.
On the internet, and that makes it true.
What about have you ever seen Rebels?
Oh, Rebels is awesome.
Oh,
We'll
you
talk
fake
about
fan. Fake fan.
that. Fake fan.
All right, let's get into this. Let's do do we need to do our countdowns real fast? All right, so I'm going to walk through them real fast. Clone Wars, 61 days at the longest. Star Wars Day, 126 days till May the 4th. Star Wars Celebration is kind of our big benchmark coming up. 241 days, August 27th, and still no word on when Obi-Wan Kenobi will be released, but we know that the scripts are out there, as Tim kind of mentioned. Looks like they're doing some casting. So that is our news and our countdowns. Now I think we're ready to start Chapter 8 of The Mandalorian, called Redemption. What did you think about this episode, Tim? This season close?
So I'm going to say one more thing about Rise of Skywalker.
Okay.
Actually, in response to your question.
Do it.
I loved the Rise of Skywalker as a
I
closing
did
to
too.
the Skywalker saga.
I did
and
too.
I loved this as a closing to season 1.
Yeah, I think they wrapped both of them up really well. I can't seem to help but come across as despite being also a fake fan, sounding like I'm a real fan, because I've loved them both.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So this was our longest episode at 48 minutes. But I'll tell you, it's a white knuckle thrill ride. It doesn't feel like 48 minutes, does it? How many times did you watch it?
It was quick. It was quick.
So I watched it 3 times. So this was directed by Taika Waititi. Do you know that name?
I don't.
So Taika Waititi directed this. He's also the voice of IG-11. So he's been involved in The Mandalorian since the very beginning. I know him because of his mockumentary called What We Do in the Shadows. He's a New Zealand actor / writer, director. The guy is hilarious, and I never, ever, ever would have guessed that was him doing IG-11 after having seen him in What We Do in the Shadows. If you haven't seen What We Do in the Shadows, it's a documentary or mockumentary, and then they turned it into a TV series. Both of them are well worth watching. Very, very funny. But anyway, he is IG-11. He directed it. He's also directing something called Thor: Love and Thunder. He wrote the screenplay for that, in fact. You know what I'm talking about now? You've heard of Thor, right?
I have.
Okay. You sound really out of it, man. Are you there?
Yeah, sorry. I'm wondering what everyone's going to hear, and I don't know if you picked up on it or not, but
I heard a weird
recording above
noise.
my garage, and my garage door was just opened and closed, and I was sending a message out with my
Fascinating. I'm going to move on.
telephone device to make it stop.
So he screenplayed and directed Thor: Love and Thunder, which comes out, I think, in 2021. So we got a little while for that.
Yeah. Okay.
So
yes,
this
yes,
is Taika Waititi. All right. Well, I don't think I got any other meta besides that. So let's get into it, shall we?
Yeah, let's do it.
Because
so
yeah,
we've got our opener.
yeah,
Our from last time,
I love it.
and we kind of
Wait a minute. What do you mean from last time?
Our previously on The Mandalorian.
Oh, a recap. I didn't really pay attention to it that much this time.
Okay.
I did last
so
time.
The only thing in there was when, and it was from last time when Moff Gideon said that, you have something I want, and I'll have it soon, and all those things. And we were debating whether or not he knew the asset was not with them.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to
And
mention that.
I think that he knows it's not with them.
Well,
but
the
he doesn't
Mandalorian
know.
will make a mention of that when they do the Wait Till Sunset.
Right.
So
But he doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't know where it is at that point either. Yeah.
yeah, but we're getting way ahead of
Um,
ourselves.
so we start off with the speeder bikes.
And did you see all the controversy this created?
Yes. Yes. The most hated characters in Star Wars.
Yeah,
Is
so
that what you're
Adam
talking about?
Pally, who I wasn't familiar with, and Jason Sudeikis, I think that's how you pronounce his name. He's from Saturday Night Live. I am somewhat familiar with. Yeah, they started getting like, and I hope it was kidding, but it was almost like hate mail. It was like good morning to everyone except for these two, because what they do? What did they do, Tim? That was such a crime.
Well, I think they were speeding on their bikes.
Yeah, I
They were
guess
breaking
everyone hates
the
speed demons.
speeders.
They,
Yeah, I have that here. I have speeder bikes, awesome, scout troopers, jerks. Right, like that was the first thing I wrote.
but hilarious
Um,
jerks.
They are hilarious jerks, but they hit.
They hit
They hit
Baby
Gizmo.
Yoda. Baby Yoda got hit
Yeah.
3 times.
Ooh,
This
that was a piece of news I saw.
What?
Back up, meta, real quick,
meta.
because he just reminded me. Bob Iger, you know who Bob Iger is?
He,
CEO of Disney.
yeah.
Apparently referred to him as Baby Yoda,
Uh-oh.
and John Favreau gave him a hard time about it.
Well, John Favreau is the Senate. I mean, Star Wars.
Star Wars.
John
So just
Favreau
funny.
is Star Wars. I mean, I'd vote
Anyway.
for him. All right, between him and Dave Filoni, they just make me happy. But so these guys had this conversation. This came across as like very Tarantino-esque to me because just the conversation holds your attention. And it's just two guys, and they talk about, they call in. They can't go in because Moff took out a squad of local troopers. And I love it. They're just talking back and forth about it. Why does the Moff want it? Who knows? Maybe he wants to eat it. And then the other guy is like, well, let's call him, or let's go in, or let's mess with the Baby Yoda. And he's like, the Moff just killed his own men. I get that point. Do you get that point? I thought that was a great line. I get the point. And then he pulls out his pistol. Ah, this was so good. What's he doing with
Well,
that
then he-
pistol?
Oh yeah,
He starts shooting.
they start shooting.
They can't hit nothing. That was hilarious. And then he just shakes his head and puts the pistol back. And,
And they
Knock.
both did it. Like I like that. The one kept missing. The other one's like, oh, let me take mine out, and I'll shoot this thing too. And they just both were all over the place.
And if you're like me, when the second one pulled his, you expect him to hit it. To be like, nah,
Yes.
this is...
100%.
Neither of them can hit it. Then Knock wrote me, and he's like, they're just like Kruger from Seinfeld. Do you remember that guy? The K fell off the building. Ah, well.
Yeah.
Oh, well. So I thought that was a great comparison. So then he calls back up. Any update? And they say he just killed an officer for interrupting.
It'll be a
So
while.
it's at this point where Pally tries to, he wants to see it, and he opens the bag, and Baby Yoda gets him.
Yep. Takes a big chomp.
Yeah, and he punches Baby Yoda, and this is
does.
gonna earn them some hatred across the internet.
Yeah, that was almost worse than what the first guy did.
Yeah, he hit him harder. The first
Yeah.
guy kind of slapped him a couple times, but yeah, that guy punched him. But Baby Yoda can take a punch, man.
Yeah, apparently.
But that's okay, because his nurse droid shows up.
Yeah, stop that.
Yeah, IG-11, and so this is a return of IG-11, and they're like, I thought you was a hunter. And the trooper just says, I'm sorry, nurse, and then everything kind of goes bad for the troopers pretty quick. What do you think about that fight?
Yeah, he breaks the arm that first struck the baby.
Yeah. He dismantles those guys. I mean, he doesn't shoot them, he just pounds them into oblivion. And it kind of reminded me of the very first scene of the series itself was striking and how violent it was. And then they kind of tone a lot of that violence down, especially like with the Sorgan episode, which had a battle, but it wasn't particularly violent, like compared to some of this stuff.
Yeah.
But this was a violent episode, and that ends well. IG-11 says that was unpleasant. I'm sorry you had to see that. To Baby
That was
Yoda,
not fun.
who's
Sorry you had to see that.
and that ends their cold opener. Yeah?
That tells you right there. I mean, obviously at this point we're convinced that IG-11 is good and is there for Baby Yoda, but
He's a
that
good
line
guy.
right there kind of says, "This is who I am now."
Yep.
Um,
Oh, his
which is
character is
awesome.
fantastic in this. All right,
Yes.
so now we begin the episode for real, and we see the title is Redemption, and it's kind of nice because we see IG-11's been redeemed. It's just that title I think has multiple meanings. Excuse me, I'm coughing a little. The let's see, they go back to I don't know what to call that building, a cantina, whatever the building is they're trapped in. That's where they start up again, and they're talking about trying to get out with the sewers. And Moff Gideon's got a plan, and he sets up something a giant machine gun type weapon. What's that thing called?
It's an E-Web heavy repeating blaster.
Yeah. And then we get this is where I wanted to say so Moff Gideon talks about waiting till sunset. And he gives a speech that we're gonna have to break down. It was like kind of a chore rewatching this one because there's so much information in this
It
episode.
really is. All right, so come back. Before we get into the speech, I have one quick question.
Yeah.
Why is there a sewer vent?
I would guess it's gray water, not sewer. That's a common misunderstanding. I don't know, but it's obviously not the sewer because it goes into where they're hiding, and that did look more like gray water runoff type. But it doesn't
Right.
seem like a planet that gets a lot. I don't know.
It was just kind of
I
strange.
can't watch this. There are a couple things in this that I'm like, okay, that doesn't work, and we'll
I mean,
get
I
to
assume
them.
it was garbage chute style escape down this way, that which was cool.
Yeah, but they couldn't
Um,
blast it open with their blasters.
they couldn't.
Cara Dune tried, which is
Yeah.
going to be part of the problem I had with the episode. All right, so this whole wait till sunset. The first time I saw it, that bothered me. Like, what? Why? Why are you waiting till sunset?
That
And
bothered me at first too, and then I think I felt better about it after watching it again.
well, the scout troopers are unable to check in because of Gideon's, just horrible leadership style of killing people that bother him. So they can't confirm or deny that they've got the baby with them because Gideon, everyone's too afraid to tell him what's going on.
Right.
And so he is now dealing with an unknown quantity. And the Mandalorian points that out. He says that, he's waiting because he doesn't have the baby yet. Not realizing that at that point, the Scout Troopers did, but not for long. But then he gives his speech.
Yes.
Number one, Cara Cynthia, Dune of Alderaan. Cara
Sarah
Cynthia, Dune of
Dune
Alderaan.
of Alderaan.
Yeah, she probably
This is
doesn't care. Now, you said,
awesome.
was it last episode or one of our podcasts, you said no one from Alderaan had ever complained about the Empire.
I think I did say that.
You did say that. And I think we found someone from Alderaan who's complaining about the Empire.
Which is awesome.
I'm guessing she was away at the fateful moment. I guess there was a few
I would assume
off-worlders.
so, yeah.
Um,
One of the rebels already.
so it's clear why she hates the Empire.
Yes.
And
I
then
gotta tell you what. As a rule,
yeah.
the people of Alderaan are not a peaceful people anymore.
Well, if she's probably a pretty good percentage of the people of Alderaan.
Yeah, her, Leia,
Yeah.
and maybe a few others, but I don't think they're a peaceful people anymore.
Well, you push people hard and blow up their planet and whatnot. It's a tough old world. Well, not that one. It blew up. Anyway, then he says the decommissioned Mandalorian hunter, and he mispronounces the name. Actually, just says the last name, Djarin. We know the full name now is Din Djarin, but he says Djarin. And he says he probably remembers the songs of the Siege of Mandalore and the Night of 1,000 Tears when they killed all
Yeah.
the Mandalorian recruits. This is significant, especially if
And-
you're into the Star Wars lore and history.
Yeah.
And this is significant to someone named Sabine Wren. As a matter of fact, it's a little scary. There's stuff about Rise of Skywalker that we could extrapolate, but we can't do any spoilers. Darn it!
No
Darn
spoilers.
it! Darn it! Darn it! And then he did you have anything to say about that before I give his description of Grief Karga?
Yeah, because it's funny. I have something about Grief Karga too. No, nothing extra there. That's it. This is all in reference to, just before we keep going, all in reference to, hey, we've got this giant gun, and all of you should understand how it's going to be used.
Yeah, yeah.
right?
He's
Like that's what he's referencing.
giving examples of when they had used it to kill lots of people. He actually says the predecessor of that gun.
Right.
And I assume that that is the gun we see in Empire Strikes Back. Remember on
Yes.
Hoth? I assume
Yep.
that the E-Web is like the next generation of that weapon. Because it's kind of neat the way they were setting them up together. And then he says of Grief Karga, disgraced magistrate. What do you think that means? Do you think Grief was part of the Empire?
I don't know.
I kind of got a Rommel vibe going on here. Do you get that reference?
Yeah,
So
but
he
I
had
didn't.
Huh?
I didn't even catch that.
Yeah, they called him a
Magistrate.
disgraced magistrate. And I started thinking about, like, maybe not everyone who worked for the Empire was imperial. That's why I say a Rommel vibe. Rommel, worked for the German Wehrmacht, but he wasn't a Nazi. So it's kind of interesting, like, maybe he did work for the Empire, but he never really believed in the Empire. So, especially in a backwater, you could see how that someone might fall into that trap.
Well, and once the Empire had fallen, I mean, there's no saying how long he was in this position.
Well, he says
Which-
disgraced magistrate, which tells me he probably broke with the Empire before the Empire fell, which is good. Maybe he broke when
Yeah.
Alderaan got blown up.
Okay.
I'm going to say that
that's
because
better
I
than
like
I got.
it.
Because when I watched this, I didn't see the disgraced magistrate. Like I didn't hear that line. I heard him say, "Use the wisdom of your years."
Yeah, he says disgraced magistrate, Grief Karga.
Yeah. Use the wisdom of your years, or let your year, or whatever. Like the way that I took the whole thing was, Cara Dune, you've seen this thing mow down your own people. Din Djarin, you've seen, or you've heard of and understand what he did with these things on Mandalore, and Grief Karga, you're old.
Well, see, to me, I took it as in Grief Karga, you've served in the Empire before, so you know.
Right, you've been around.
And then Grief says, what do you propose? And what is... I like what Gideon said. If you're asking if you can trust me, you cannot. And
Right,
that's
when he
where
says, what assurances can you give us?
Giancarlo
absolutely.
Esposito brings that just kind of power to the screen. The speech is awesome. His speechifying is awesome. So during my rewatch, I kept trying to see what was on his hip because I want to see if the saber was there. And you don't see the saber until the very end. But he does say, you can trust me to act in my own self-interest. And then he tells him, you have until nightfall. Which means IG-11 had to kill the first two scouts before this speech was over so that Moff would genuinely not know what was going on with Baby Yoda. Because Grief says, should we give it a shot? Cara Dune says no. And do you remember what she says will happen to her if she gets caught? This is cool.
The Mind Flayer.
Yeah, where did we see a Mind Flayer before?
They'll give her to a Mind Flayer.
That's
See
a
a Mind
myth.
Flayer in Rogue One.
That's right.
That's a myth. It's wartime propaganda.
Wartime propaganda, Mind Flayer. So we got a cool Rogue One nod right there. Those aren't real. And the Mando says, and again, there's just so much in this episode. I know who he is. And he says Moff Gideon, and Dune says no, because Gideon was executed for war crimes. Apparently not true. But how does the Mandalorian know that it is Gideon and Moff Gideon?
Because he knows his name.
He knows his name. And where's the only place his name was recorded?
On Mandalore.
Yeah, and the records on Mandalore. And this is hugely significant. And it proves, then we get into a flashback. Because he says, I wasn't born on Mandalore. Mandalore is a creed, not a race. And we go to the flashback of him as a child. And it goes back to a theory you and I have had pretty much this whole series, that he was not born on Mandalore, that they're out finding foundlings and turning them into Mandalorians. Which I think is awesome.
Which is really interesting because it makes it seem like if the record of him was on Mandalore,
Yeah.
then he must have been around before the Siege of Mandalore, before the fall of Mandalore.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which really brings up new questions because that means the Mandalorians
Oh, I got
are
a bunch.
venturing out, saving people.
Yep. So let's talk about that flashback because we've seen parts of it before where super battle droids. So it's obviously the Clone Wars. The droid army, the Separatist army, is coming through there and just killing civilians. And it's pretty scary. Um, and of course, his real parents hide him in that little bunker area, and it looks like it's going to be over for him. And all of a sudden, the super battle droid gets shot up, and a Mandalorian standing there. Such a beautifully framed shot. He's silhouetted with the sun behind him, and then he reaches out his hand and just does the come to me gesture. It's so beautifully done. But you know what I noticed about all those Mandalorians?
What's that?
They were all wearing the same armor and colors. Because Mandalorians typically their armor's unique. This looks like a uniform. Like this, I think we saw the army of Mandalore.
Right.
Which is cool because they were using the same weapons. They were using again the same colors, same armor. So I think we saw. I mean, they were standardized. And he gets the nod. The Mandalorian who saves our guy Din Djarin. Is that how you pronounce it? And they evacuate with
yeah.
And he says he was a foundling raised with the fighting corps and sworn to the creed. And this is where, as you already mentioned, he says the only record of his name was in the registers of Mandalore. I don't know what an ISB officer is, do you?
I was trying to remember, and I meant to look it up because it was.
Because Moff Gideon is the ISB officer during the Purge, is what he says.
Right, and I think we've heard it somewhere, and I can't think of where.
It makes me think of, like, there was probably one on Lothal and Rebels.
That's probably what... Rebels is awesome.
Rebels is awesome.
But that's what I'm thinking.
And
because I know we've heard it.
And this is where Mando kind of gives an explanation for the whole "we'll wait till sunset" thing. He says he needs us, which means the child got away safely. If they capture the kid, we'd be dead. And because the very first time I watched it, I was like, why wait till sunset? But there actually is a reason for it. And then they decide to try...
Security Bureau.
Ooh, the ISB. Pew pew. Do it.
Pew pew.
Come in, Quill. So they decide to try to contact Quill, but they don't get Quill. We get confirmation of our worst fears, Tim. We hear first we hear a laughing baby, and then we hear IG-11's voice. And what does he say?
Quill has been terminated.
Yeah, and the Mandalorian immediately suspects IG-11 of it. What did you do? And then he says, fulfilling my base function to nurse and protect.
He just says fulfilling my base function.
Yeah, which is a little like disturbing.
Yeah.
Because
he's like I killed him. Wait, what the Mandalorian hears.
Yeah. Well, then he goes on. Then the scene rather switches to IG-11, and he goes John Wick on that town. One of the coolest scenes ever in Star Wars. Probably the most beautiful as far as like just going through and taking people out scene outside of Darth Vader in Rogue One. Yeah. He just tears through that town, man.
And something really interesting happens during this.
Many things really interesting happen. But what are you talking about?
I'm talking about Gizmo.
His reaction's a little disturbing, isn't it?
They shoot to him, and he is just giddy.
He's happy as he can be seeing these guys get killed left and right.
Well, now here's the question, because we've had this debate, right? Like, is this thing growing up to be a killer, or
he's a bad guy.
He was also on a fun ride, and he could finally see what he was doing.
That's true, and he wasn't getting punched in the head anymore.
This could have been a child just enjoying the ride, so it's a blend of things, you know?
It's a powerful child.
It is a powerful child.
He's no Joffrey, though. Yeah. So, all right.
Want to talk about disappointing endings? That's a disappointing ending.
We won't talk about Game of Thrones. Anyway, Grief Karga said, well, IG-11, he creates this nice distraction. He's taking these guys out. Did you see what Grief Karga does before he goes into action? Takes a shot of Krill.
Oh,
I love that.
Yeah, his spatchka.
Spotchka, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Again, just adding to the Western flair of this whole thing, because that's such a kind of a Western trope of shooting your way out of the bar. You got to take a shot first. So he takes a
Yep.
shot. IG-11 is brought the fight to the Imperials, and these are some of the best fight scenes ever because at this point that our heroes decide to try to make a break out of the bar.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this before I launch into it?
Well, honestly, except for one major piece, it almost looked like it was going to work.
Yeah, they started. Yeah, that was a really
You know.
well paced battle. What stood
I'll
out
tell
to
you what.
me, huh?
Go ahead.
So when he comes out of the bar, we've seen that scene in trailers before, as you know, the stormtroopers rush him and he just grabs one and shoots the other, and he's getting shot in the shoulder, but he keeps going. But what struck me was when he got to the Death Troopers, those guys were an actual handful for him.
Yes.
I love that they took the time to really make the Death Troopers scary. Like he got into hand to hand with two of them, and they were actually kind of holding their own there with him. So that was
Yeah.
cool.
That was really cool. Now they kind of messed that up for me later on, though, when the three Death Troopers came in against Kara.
She lit him up, dude.
Well, they blew the back door, and then she was just kind of behind the bar, and they were just kind of shooting around.
I don't think they knew where she was. And that
Yeah.
is the next scene. They go after her. They blow the door. Then, like I said, three of them come in, and if you notice, they're randomly just shooting the bar up. They don't seem to know where she is,
Yeah.
and she
And then at
pops
this
out
point,
with a machine gun essentially, and they're grouped in a together.
and runs
So
them quick. Yeah, they're all just standing there together.
and
And then we shoot back outside, and now the enemy has once again supplied our Mandalorian with a great big gun.
very much a
Um,
callback to the first episode.
yes, and he once again just mows them down,
Yeah, he picks that thing up Rambo style, man. It's
which
like
is good
Rambo
because
with an M60.
he has his own great big gun that he doesn't carry around anymore.
No, we hadn't seen that in a while. That just
Um,
disappeared into the ethos.
yeah,
But that was
well,
a
I think
one-shot
did we
weapon
mention it
anyway.
last time that it was?
We don't know. We don't want to
So
talk about it.
here's my question. It could be
Pew
because we
pew.
see later on that he's able to resupply.
Yeah.
It could be that he needed to resupply
Yeah.
after the battles he'd done. So we could see it come back in season 2. He's done some resupply. That's skipping forward a little bit, but he gets to do some resupply, and so we may see that rifle come back, the pulse rifle.
We also see how smart Gideon is here. Because he does shoot the Mandalorian in the head, which
Was
just...
it in the head? Because it was really interesting when he shot him. It looked like it hurt him. I was wondering if he found a chink in the armor.
I think he hit him in the head. And he does yell out. But I think it just rocks his world. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe he did find maybe because we find out later he is wounded, what it looks like behind the neck. Maybe that's when he got hit. But
Yeah.
but he jumps back up because he's wearing Beskar, and then Moff does something pretty smart. He blows the generator for the E-Web cannon, and
He does.
now our guy is knocked down and he's out of the fight. Oh man, and we see the team really come together. IG-11 lays down cover fire. You see Grief laying down cover fire, and Cara Dune comes out there and drags them in, and they retreat back into the bar again, and once again they're trapped. Only this time, they've got IG-11 and Baby Yoda with them. Do you think that'll turn out to be a decisive advantage? A little bit.
Yeah,
A little
I'd
bit.
say so.
Because what can IG-11 do?
IG-11 can cut through the sewer grate.
Yeah, he can. And Moff Gideon says, burn them out, and we see a new type of stormtrooper. Have we seen these before outside of, like, Clone Wars? The Flame Trooper?
I don't think so.
That guy was
I think that's
awesome.
the first live action, yeah, because he looked great. But I don't
Yeah.
think we've seen much color on any of the troopers in the movies.
He was genuinely scary. And he carried
Yeah.
himself with a confidence that you don't see in most stormtroopers. And he says, burn them out. And Grief tries to grab hold of Baby Yoda, and IG-11 says, I'll kill you. And Grief's response is, I love IG units. And he means it. He's not being sarcastic. It's like, I love IG units. The Mandalorian's bleeding. He's down. What are we going to do? He says, leave me. Remember this?
Yeah.
But he gives
says,
something to Baby Yoda. What does he give him?
Well, he gives it to Cara Dune
To give for the Baby Yoda, yeah. What was it? Do you know?
to take with them to show. It's the dragon head.
Yeah, it's the Mandalorian dragon head, the
Symbol of
famous skull.
Mandalore.
Nice. So he says, leave me, and he says, I'm going to cover you and all this, and he gives his let me have a warrior's death type stuff. And then they're arguing back and forth. Meanwhile, IG-11's trying to cut through the grate, but it's taking him a while. And in comes our flame trooper. How's that go?
Yes.
It goes yes?
He's flaming some stuff up, and then all of a sudden he points it directly toward where they all are.
Yeah, he does.
Right.
And he
And
hits
then
the
the
go
fire
button.
is stopped.
What? Fire doesn't just stop. It would take some
it
sort of
just
wizard.
stopped.
You'd have to be some sort of
It would
wizard to
take some
stop
sort of
fire.
wizard.
Yeah, Baby
Now,
Yoda.
before he does, and before that, I think it's important here to point out that if he hadn't stopped him,
Yeah.
he would have killed the baby.
He would have killed them all.
He would have burned it up. Yeah, which I found
we
interesting.
still have a problem here. We have a big problem. I mean, with the series. Do you remember in episode 1, the Mandalorian is hired to get the baby, but IG-11 very specifically says, no, I was hired to terminate the baby. So someone is trying to kill
Right,
this
exactly.
kid, and
have
we
that-
don't know
that
who.
discrepancy again.
So we don't know what's going on here. With do they want him alive or dead, and where's that divergence? So yeah, you're right. The flame
Baby
trooper was
Yoda,
going to kill them all. It seems like Moff Gideon
Gizmo,
is
Gizmo
looking.
does stop it. We've seen.
What?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it looks like Moff Gideon is looking more for confirmation of death of Baby Yoda, rather than just taking him in.
Right, exactly.
So I don't know. Whereas
But we don't have to worry about that here.
Whereas the guy called the client seemed to want him alive, or at least he was okay with him being alive. All right,
Yeah.
so IG-11 gives Cara Dune the child. Promise me you'll bring him, is what Cara Dune says to IG-11 about.
Well, no, we're not. But there's one more piece here.
No, I'm
'Cause
there.
I think we kind of skimmed over it.
What?
Gizmo stopped the fire.
He did. Well, I said that. Said it
And
would
we've
take
seen a giant fire get stopped like this before.
We have
Do you remember where?
Rebels, which is
Yeah, Rebels is awesome.
it is awesome.
It's awesome. And then Baby Yoda gets a little murdery here, right? He has a little flick of the finger, and that flame trooper is torn apart.
It is wild looking. Yeah, when he's ejected from the
Yeah.
building on fire. Yeah, that was a
All right,
rough
folks,
way to
I'm gonna
go.
leave you alone with Jim for about 2 minutes.
All right. About 2 minutes, huh? All right, now it's time for me to talk about Tim. Anyway, so what ends up happening is the hunter says he's been reprogrammed, he's not a hunter, and he's left alone with our hero, the Mandalorian, who appears to be dying, and the Mandalorian asks IG-11 to shoot him and kill him because he doesn't want to die at the hand of the Imperials. And IG-11 says, well, if I take your helmet off, I can fix you. And he says, I'm not allowed. It's forbidden. No living thing can see my face. And IG-11 just simply says, I am not a living thing. So this is nice. And we finally see the reveal. So we see Pedro Pascal's face for real. He pulls the helmet off, and he sprays the Bacta on him, which is also a bit of fan service to the games. A lot of times in the Star Wars video games, whenever your character's hurt, you go find yourself a little Bacta, and you're going to be all right. Bacta, of course, is also the big tank that Luke is put in after his encounter at the Wampa Cave. IG-11 attempts to make a little joke here about the central processing unit is damaged. Mandalorian doesn't seem to have a sense of humor, and IG-11 has to explain to him that it's a joke. And now our heroes lead down into the tunnels. So as Tim was saying, he really did disappear, didn't he? So it's just us right now. So how are you doing? Okay, good. All right. Anyway, so they lead down into the tunnels that, again, I think is gray water, and Tim thinks is sewage. And they said we need. He says we need the Mandalorian to escort us to safety. And when they come around the corner, they find a pile of broken and ruined Mandalorian armor. So this is very, very disturbing. And the first time I saw it, my concern was, who's leaving all this Beskar laying around, considering we know that this stuff is expensive, and it is being left around, but that gets explained pretty quickly. So the Mandalorian is sitting there while he kind of falls down, and Tim has rejoined us.
Hey, everybody. Hello there.
And yeah, I was saying he found the Beskar, and I was originally like, why would they leave such valuable stuff laying around? Did you have
Right.
that
Well,
thought
my
too?
first thought was that they'd all been wiped out, and it was kind of left as a warning, I guess.
Yeah.
But I don't think either of those are true anymore.
No, they explained pretty quickly why the armor's there, and Mando immediately turns around. Who's he blame?
Grief.
Yeah, did you do this? Yeah, and I love Grief's answer is pretty right on. And no, as soon as you left, man, the fighting stopped. They're not zealots; they're bounty hunters.
Yeah, like they weren't after you. They were after.
And,
They were after the baby.
and Grief's version of this event quickly gets confirmed when we see who.
The armorer.
Ah, so awesome. So the armor comes out, and she says the Imperials have arrived. And Mandalorian Din Djarin asked, did any of them escape? Did they escape him?
She said, "I hope so."
Yeah, it wasn't a real bright response she gave there, was it?
Yeah, which was interesting because once they left their armor, I don't know what reference to them being Mandalorian would.
Well,
would
I think the point was most of them didn't leave. That's the army, you see. I'd be curious to know if the heavy infantry guy made it, because you know who voiced the heavy infantry guy?
No.
Jon Favreau.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of seemed like it was really hard to read this scene because when I watched it again, she said, "Well, then the Empire showed up." Well, that could have been the heavier Imperial presence on the planet, not necessarily in their sewer.
Yeah. Well, that's what I assume she means. That's
Right. So it seemed like they decided to vacate, like not move or maybe in the process of moving the covert, she said, "All right, everybody has to drop." It's strange that they would all drop the armor, but drop the armor and go.
I don't think they dropped the armor. I think they were dead. Like when she says, I think a few of them made it off world, I think that those were the few that actually fought, survived, and escaped. And all that armor we see represents dead Mandalorians.
Yeah. Well, that was my first thought too. So I'm not sure, right? I mean,
I'm sure those are the dead Mandalorians. Because, and this also goes back to what you pointed out when Fennec Shan said, things didn't go well on Navarro.
Right.
So I think that was confirmed. That your interpretation of her comments was sadly confirmed. That the Mandalorians were pretty much wiped out. She's the only survivor that we know of. She's the only survivor that she knows of. She's
she's the only survivor, right? I mean, even if they left, they're no longer part of the Mandalorian.
Well, they are. They just went somewhere else. I assume there are these little communities of Mandalorians scattered throughout the galaxy.
Well,
at this
once they've removed their helmet under
they
the
didn't
new law.
remove their helmet. That's where I don't think you're understanding what I'm saying.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, those
You're
guys
saying-
are dead. The ones without the helmets.
Okay, but the other guys potentially escaped with helmets.
That's
full
my
armor
understanding.
still.
Yeah,
Okay, I
yeah.
like that a little bit better.
It
Ooh, I wonder if
gives
there's
a
gonna
little
be
hope.
there's gonna be one of those Mandalorians who gets mad at him again somewhere when he meets up with him.
Yeah. So now we're back in the forge because she's melting down the remaining Beskar to, I guess she's, trying to keep as much of it as she can. And she talks about the boat and Baby Yoda. She says, this is the one you hunted and then saved. And Mandalorian's answer is awesome, and it has huge impact on the armor. What does he say? Do you remember?
Yeah, he's also the one that saved me.
And the one who saved me as well. And she says, from the Mudhorn. And I'm just going to skip ahead a little bit because this is where she's going to create his sigil from.
Right.
And I was listening to another podcast where they were talking. They seemed confused by this, um, because they're like, "Well, didn't they say that that was an ignoble kill?" But that's her point because she says you have become a clan of two,
Right.
and so I thought this was pretty clear why that his sigil is now the Mudhorn because it unites him and Baby Yoda.
Yes. And they've both saved each other.
Yeah, so
And
that I
that's a
like
big
this a
point.
lot. Plus, it's cool looking.
It is cool looking. I had to look back at it because at first it looked more like a symbol, like another language letter. You know, in the first quick watch, I had to go back and look at it again to see that it was in fact the Mudhorn.
Yeah, yeah. So and then she's talking about it. It looks helpless, and he says it's not. It says it can move objects with its mind.
Yes.
And this again, we get into so much lore here. What does she say?
She says that the original Mandalore, right?
Mandalore the Great.
Mandalore the Great, fought a group called the Jedi,
An order of sorcerers. That's
Yes.
right, called the Jedi.
who could do such things.
Yep. The songs of
Um,
battle between Mandalore the Great and an order of sorcerers called Jedi. And the
Yes.
Mandalorian says, "Is it an enemy?"
She says its kind were enemy. Oh, he said so it's an enemy or something like that. Yeah, she said
Yeah.
its kind were enemies, but this individual is not.
Yeah.
It is a foundling.
And this is why I'm like, go back and listen to our History of Mandalore podcast, because we talk about this. For the most part, Mandalore was always enemies against either the Republic or the Jedi, usually both. Not that they were friends of the Sith, they just were fiercely independent against all other powers.
Right.
Just like they fought the Empire, apparently, and lost, which I guess we'll learn about, hopefully. So yeah, so they consider the Jedi to be enemies. So, yeah, but this one's not an enemy. And so what's the Mandalorian's responsibility to a foundling? What's the creed say?
You are as its father.
Yeah, it's like,
This is the way.
so powerfully put. He's in
Did
your
you notice
care.
that she said this is the way twice?
Yes, she
I
did.
think, and he didn't repeat it back.
Nope. She said, you, the creed, he's in your care, you must reunite him with its own kind. And he says, deliver it, I love the way he put this, deliver it to a race of enemy sorcerers. And she says, this is the way. And you're right, she said it twice in this conversation. But yeah, it said, treat it as, let's see, until it is of age or reunited with its own kind, you are as its father. Aww. And that's when he gets his signet. And she calls him a clan of two. And now more practical matters are about to emerge. Because we hear movement in the hallway. IG-11 goes out to find out what's going on. Cara Dune says, we need an escape plan. And but the armor is not done yet. She has one last gift for, she says rearm yourself, re-equip yourself. And then she has one last gift for our guy. And this creates the
Yeah.
second problem for me in this episode. What'd she give him?
She says, "Have you trained in the Rising Phoenix?"
Yeah.
He said, "As a child." And then she gives him a jetpack.
Yeah. But did you hear her instruction?
She said, "Practice with it. It will not obey your commands until you're ready."
Until you know it is the actual quote. Until you know it, it will not listen to your commands. And of course he's going to use this later on. It's like, okay, so why even have that line in the script, to be honest?
I have that written over here as a meme. Do not use this until you are ready. He says, "Okay." 5 minutes later.
I'm ready.
Um,
Now it's time for them to leave. She
But
says,
yeah,
follow
so
the
here
lava
was-
caves.
so here was the thing with that.
Yeah.
Well, what was your concern with it? I guess was mine.
The fact that she makes it sound like there is this big process involved in learning how to like make this equipment your own. It sounds like it's mind operated somehow.
Yeah, and I think some of that is, manipulating your body, yourself to make it work the way you want. He only does really two things with it.
He goes up and down. Yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? So he
Yeah.
knows, like, we don't see him do anything beyond that. Like he
That's
has
true.
to use it, but he doesn't actually venture off with it.
And
In
he's
a
not
real
exactly
way.
graceful when he comes down either. So I mean,
Right.
I'm not really bothered by it. There is another glaring error that bothers me more. Um, but that one doesn't really bother me. So they decide it's time to move on. He says he's going to stay with the armor, and that
Now,
was where she
before she.
repeats.
Oh,
Hmm?
yeah. No, go ahead, say that,
That
because
was
I
where
want to
she
say something here,
repeats
too.
that this is the way you have to take care of the foundling.
Right, and then she says something to one of them to. Oh, she says IG-11. She says, hold on to this for Din
Yep.
Djarin, which that part I thought was weird, that she said his name now.
I do too. It's like somehow she knows that it's all come undone.
Right,
Like
like,
somehow maybe she even knew what was going on with Moff Gideon and had heard that conversation.
right, like that part was strange. Um, and then they go, and then she
She's by
kneels.
herself,
Yeah,
and five stormtroopers come in, and all
yeah,
she's
they
got
do.
is like a hammer and some tongs. So
Yeah,
she's helpless.
and she wrecks these guys.
It is brutal. One of the most brutal fight scenes in all of Star Wars, and I think that's the second time I've said that this episode.
And I think it was
Third
so
time if
brutal
you count
because of the smashing of the helmet.
the faceplates. Yeah, you see him just disintegrate under that hammer.
Yeah,
It is wild, man. She just
it's a hammer designed to forge
Beskar,
Beskar.
yeah,
You know,
and she's breaking limbs, she's breaking faces, she's breaking skulls, and there's five of them, and she just takes them all out, and oh, that was beautiful. And that's the last we see of the armor for the entire season, which has only got like 15 minutes more. They
right?
make their way down to the lava river. What did this remind you of? Now, I've said before, I'm a historian, and this has a very, very, very clear like connection. Do you see what symbolism that they're kind of making here?
I don't know, the River of Slime in Ghostbusters 2.
That's exactly it. I was actually thinking of the river of Acheron, or the river Styx, as it's also known as.
Oh,
Well,
that
actually, those
one.
are two separate rivers that flow through Hades.
Yes.
And the name of the ferryman in Greek mythology is pronounced differently depending on who you listen to. It's either Charon or Charon, or even in some people call it Gregron. It's really weird. I like just Charon.
I've heard Charon
Let's go Charon. So we got
more.
this crazy R2 unit, man.
He is awesome looking, and he's really scary when he activates. Like
Exactly.
he was
He
like, "Here I come," and I was like, "Oh crap!"
This is Charon the ferryman, and this is the River
Yeah.
Styx. Only they're going from Hades to Earth, or to the world.
Right.
If you take the if you take this as symbolic, which I do, um, and of course they have to kill him because they're trying to emerge from this tomb, basically, where we have this lady down there melting down the armor of her dead friends.
Or on the other side, he's taking them to their certain doom.
Well, they're trying to emerge into the light, and that's what he
Right.
does end up trying to do, so they kill him. There's a lot of symbolism in this, I think.
Yeah.
And I thought it was so beautifully done. But yeah, what a cool creation when that R2
He was
unit.
neat.
Yeah, and because of his limbs, he looks skeletal. Because Charon is basically where we get the idea of the Grim Reaper. Basically a skeleton in a big robe. Depends
Right.
on which version. Let me see. But anyway, I just thought that was so cool. And there was another thing, kind of meta, that I noticed. So they show like on board the little boat skiff thing that they're paddling down the river in. When they change scenes so that you're looking at the boat coming down, they roll the screen the same way they did in A New Hope. Like when they would change scenes, the screen would just kind of roll over the new screen. And I
Oh
thought
yeah,
that
yeah,
was
yeah.
so cool because it was very, very Star Wars New Hope looking. Anyway, just a little thing I noticed. But why
Yeah.
can't they? What's wrong, Tim? What's waiting for him at the end of the tunnel?
It appears to be an entire platoon.
An entire platoon, and judging by the way this ends, I guess this is literally the last of the stormtroopers in the entire city.
Yeah, I would say so.
So they've called in everyone to stop them, and we get a pretty powerful scene here.
Yeah, we do.
Well, first Cara Dune, well, they say stop the boat, and the R2 unit won't, so she just blows its head off, which was
I couldn't even
awesome.
tell if the R2 unit wouldn't, or if his essentially his ore was. I couldn't tell if his ore was complete.
I
You
got
know
the
what I mean?
impression he just once he started, I think he was malfunctioning, and he just kept going.
Yeah, because it looked like the ore was broken, and there wasn't a whole lot he could do. But I couldn't tell one way or the other.
No, I
So
think
then
it was
she
just hot, is why it looked like that. But I don't know. Either way,
maybe
she blows its head off,
yeah, she
and
does.
then they're like, "We're still moving forward."
Yeah, it didn't change anything.
IG-11's got a plan. I will eliminate the enemy.
Yes. So we got a long kind of talk here.
Did Did you think the Mandalorian's character change here was maybe a little too abrupt?
I did.
I did too.
Um,
Not a
Now,
big problem for me, but it was because it was so well done. But at the same time, it's like, okay, he hated this guy like up till an hour ago, and now he's like, we need you.
when I think it became clear that he was really part of the team and was really one of them now, and what's left of Quill, and all that stuff.
Well, I also chalk it up to IG-11's the only one who's seen his face, and I think that that was kind of a huge moment for him to be able to like share that with something, but still not violate the code.
That's true. I wasn't here for that talk.
No, you
Um,
you weren't here for that talk. I
no, I
talked
wasn't
about
here.
seeing
He's
Pedro
human.
Pascal.
He's
Yeah,
human. I didn't
he's
know he was gonna be. We
you
didn't
knew,
know if he was actually gonna be human. Oh no, we did know.
yeah, because we saw him
We
as
knew
a
'cause he was a
kid.
kid.
Yeah,
Yeah, we knew that. That was old news. Um, yeah, that was huge because he's not a living thing. Um,
it's
but
funny because my daughter, my youngest, doesn't know who Pedro Pascal is. I do from Game of Thrones and whatnot.
right.
So when she saw him, she's like, "That is not what I expected him to look like." She wasn't disappointed. She just didn't think the face fit. But of course, knowing who he was the whole time, I wasn't surprised or anything.
Right, exactly.
So that's kind of interesting to see hear from the perspective of someone who didn't know who the actor was. Anyway, please
So
tell me the
he gets sad,
he does. And how
right?
do we know he got sad? Did you analyze his voice or something?
Yeah, exactly.
You,
Because he said he's not sad, but he was sad.
I'm not sad.
Um, and
You're sad.
IG-11's a nurse droid, and he analyzed his voice.
I'm not sad. You're sad. Please tell me the child will be safe in your charge. And he says, "There's nothing to be sad about. I've never been alive." What a wild line.
It's interesting because we've talked about that a lot on
We
this
have
podcast.
like
The sentience of droids.
yeah, like C-3PO clearly has moments of terror at the concept of being deactivated. Um, but yeah, but IG-11 maybe it's because his primary function is a hunter droid. But even I hate to bring them up. The droids from the droid army, not the super battle droids, but the silly ones, the regular droids, they don't
Oh,
seem to like to
Roger
get
and his friends.
yeah, Roger.
Roger and Roger.
They don't seem to like to get killed either. They seem to have
Roger,
some
Roger.
sort of survival instinct. But anyway, yeah, there's this doesn't come across as a droid. It comes across as a stoic sacrifice. You know,
Yes.
and you know what I was instantly taken back to though.
What's that?
Say it. Say K2SO.
Oh yeah.
That I haven't seen a droid death so like powerful since K2SO and Rogue One, which is probably
Yeah,
one of the more like I've never been so emotionally affected by watching an animate object die as I
so
was.
I know you've already talked about this too. IG-11 told him.
I'm not a living
He
thing.
said there may be damage to your central processing unit.
Yeah, I did talk about that.
Right, that was a joke. That whole piece.
Yeah,
There's a number of things that may have gone into his programming as a nurse droid, which is, hey, not only do you need to make things better, but you need to make these people feel better when
Yeah.
whatever they're going through is going on.
need to provide
And
comfort.
when he says I'm not a living thing, that makes him feel and is willing to let him take the helmet off to save him.
Yeah,
And it's the same thing here. I was never alive. It makes him hopefully feel better about letting him make that sacrifice.
yeah,
So I wonder if that's part of the programming from Quill.
maybe. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, he's trying to help him rationalize. Either way, he goes out in a blaze of glory. Because when he so he steps into the lava, walks out right into the middle of the platoon, and says, "I cannot be captured alive," or something like that, or intact, or whatever he says. And
He appears to have a thermal detonator, right?
yeah,
In his chest.
that thing's no
And
joke, is it?
I don't think we've actually seen a thermal detonator go off
No, not like that.
in live action Star Wars. You know, we knew the threat of it when Leia had it,
Yeah.
but that's really it.
Yup.
And again, C-3PO was terrified in that moment.
Well, it clearly would have killed everything in that room in Jabba's palace.
Yeah, if it had the same explosive power as the one we saw. So that was really interesting to see that power and what happened there. I was afraid the tunnel was going to close.
Yeah, I did too. When that explosion went off, I was like, that might be a little danger close right there. But yeah, so he clears the entrance, and our friends have made it free, and they're out now, and that's it, right?
Except for these there's these two very similar looking ion engines.
Twin ion engines?
Oh yeah, I guess you could call them twins. Yeah, so they're coming around. They said, "There he is, Moff Gideon."
Moff Gideon, we forgot about this. At least I did. I was so caught up in the action, I was like, "Oh yeah, Moff Gideon's got a TIE fighter."
Yeah. Now this is the part. This was the part that gets me a little confused again about whether or not we want the baby alive.
He doesn't seem to want the baby alive.
Well, but he
misses pretty bad.
I feel like he could hit them. Like I feel like he's not Stormtrooper style missing.
That made me wonder too. Like he did 2 passes and didn't hit them at all.
Right.
Yeah, that was a little weird. And there,
so that to me made it seem like maybe he wanted them alive. Like do the 2 passes, scare them out, and then do his little landing tactic and just be there in front of them and say, "This is it. You can't go anywhere."
Maybe.
I don't know.
We never get to find out.
No, we don't. Because
After the first pass, they realize their weapons are ineffective, but Grief has a plan. He says, "Hey," what does he say? Come on, man. This is the best line.
What did he say? I didn't write that down.
Said,
yeah, I did. What am I saying? Hey, let's make the baby do the magic hand thing.
Then he says, "Come on, baby, do the magic hand thing."
Come on, baby, do the magic hand thing.
And he waves his hands at Baby Yoda waves back. And then he just says, "I'm out of ideas." So 2 episodes in a row, Grief has kind of stolen it. The last time with "he's trying to eat me," and this time with "come on, baby, do the magic hand thing." I'm out of ideas.
I think both of those were really important because we needed some more reason to like and trust him.
I love him.
I think that needed to happen. So you love Carl Weathers.
I love Carl. Well, think about it. They keep talking about Creed.
Well, here's my yes, yeah.
Ding, ding. That's what Carl Weathers famous.
I don't have any issues with Carl Weathers, but I know that you love Carl Weathers, so
Creed.
you came into it loving Grief Karga.
Baby, you got a stew.
And I didn't have a problem with Grief Karga, but they had to take and turn his character around from the person who went after the Mandalorian to the person who's now, buddies with him and wants to be a part of it. And I think these jokes were kind of the way to do that.
Yeah. I think they did a good job of making his character make sense and redeeming him. Hey, what's the name of the episode?
Redemption.
Yeah, for IG-11 we see redemption. For Carl Weathers we see redemption. I think for Mandalorian too, kind of. Because this whole chain of events started when he didn't know what to do about this bounty. So anyway, so he says, "I'm out of ideas." Grief says that. And the Mandalorian says, "I'm not." And this is where we see his finishing move. So he's like the Karate Kid crane kick thing going on here. We saw Chekhov's jetpack introduced earlier. And he puts on the jetpack, and he waits, and as the TIE fighter goes by, shoots up in the air and grappling hooks it. And this is where we get to my next big problem with this episode, and I don't see any way to fix this. Well, wait, I just realized how it gets fixed. Can you guess what my problem was?
I don't know.
Why couldn't they get into the sewers before IG-11 showed up?
Because the armor was too...
He specifically says, "I'm out of charges."
Oh, well, he resupplies.
I didn't even think about that. Yeah, until just now as I was about to complain
I
about
was
it on the
wondering because you said
podcast.
something about you having a problem with the sewers. And then you didn't actually say what your problem was with it. So
I was gonna wait till this moment, but yeah,
I
now
was
that,
wondering too.
but yeah, we just said the armorer said re-equip yourselves.
Yep.
So he grabbed 3 charges. Okay, so good, yay! Because I don't want there to be problems. Because I love the show. So
Yeah.
he uses the charges that he got from the armorer, is what I was gonna say. Pew pew. And the first one he drops, that was so cool.
Yeah.
And the last two, though, he slams on there, and then he drops away, and we see him kind of clumsily save himself with his jetpack again. And Moff Gideon's TIE fighter is taken out of the fight. And we're done, right, Tim? Everything's good to go. It's a tearful
Everything's
reunion between the Mandalorian and Baby Yoda and Grief and Cara Dune.
And then we have a kind of a tearful departure too. Like that was
We do. Did you see what's Cara Dune going to be doing now?
I was really surprised. She's gonna stay. I think she's gonna do some bounty hunting.
Yeah, he said he actually didn't say bounty hunting. He said his chief enforcer.
Oh yeah.
He offered her a job as his chief enforcer, which I
What if
actually
he's gonna look to take control as magistrate of Navarro?
yeah. So that was so they said they think that they've already cleaned up town, but I guess those two are going back to make sure. The Mandalorian takes Baby Yoda. There's this really beautiful scene of him flying away, but he does something else before he gets on board the ship. You
Oh,
know,
remind me.
he buries Quill.
Oh yes.
I thought that was a beautiful kind of touching moment. You see him build kind of a stone cairn for him. And that's the end of the episode. They get in the Razor Crest and they fly off, and there's nothing else. Oh, wait, no. On the Razor Crest, Mandalorian reaches over to Baby Yoda, and he's got something in his mouth. What is it?
It's the dragon symbol.
Yeah, and he says, "You hang on to that," and
Yep.
thus establishing the clan of two.
And that Baby Yoda is officially a Mandalorian.
He's a Mandalorian now. He's Baby Yoda Mandalorian. He's Baby Mando now. Ah, and is that the end of the episode, or was there one more scene? I can't remember.
You know, I think there was one more scene.
Oh my gosh, I was so excited when I saw the scene. I couldn't.
I
Oh my gosh, I was
was
so
like,
excited when I saw the scene.
The moment
And
that it
this
tipped
is why you
through
have
the armor.
Yes, you have to go back and listen to our podcast. This podcast is your life about the history of lightsabers because one appears right through the TIE fighter armor. What's that saber, Tim? What is it? I feel like
It's
we've
the dark
talked about
saber.
that. The dark saber. What's the history
Yeah.
of this thing?
Oh, there's so much history.
So
behind
this
the
was
dark
created
saber.
by one of the Visulas.
Yes, the only Mandalorian Jedi.
That is correct, and it's over 1,000 years old. We know that, and we
Now,
know
there are
that
a
it
lot
was.
of details. There's a lot of story.
Oh, so
Again,
I think we should briefly talk about the history of this thing. So this was there was one Mandalorian Jedi, and when he died or his service ended, that dark saber was kept at the Jedi Temple until what happened, Tim?
until the temple fell,
To whom? Who raided it?
the Mandalorians
That's right, and they took it back. And what did the dark saber become the symbol of?
became a symbol. It became Excalibur for Mandalore. It became
Yeah.
the symbol of power.
Whoever wields the dark saber is claiming leadership of all the clans of Mandalore. And now we have an Imperial Moff wielding the dark saber. Now this is scary in the implications for people who like the show. What's that show that you like a lot? It's about the time period when Luke is a little kid. So the rebellions are starting. What is that?
Rebellion. Oh, the one about the rebels.
Rebels is awesome.
Rebels is awesome.
That's the last time we saw the darksaber was in Rebels.
Yeah.
And our friend and hero Sabine Wren got control of it. Do you remember who she gave it to?
She gave it to one of her family members, didn't she?
No, she gave it to the sister of the Duchess Satine. The Duchess Satine was the one who
that's right.
tried
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
create the peaceful Mandalore and that Obi-Wan Kenobi kind of fell in love with, and she ends up being murdered by Maul.
Yep.
But her sister is, it was Satine Kryze or Kryz, it's Kryze, I don't know how it's pronounced. Satine Kryz, I think. Her sister is Bo-Katan, Kryz. And Bo-Katan is the one who Sabine Wren picks to be the leader of all Mandalore and gives her the Darksaber. And that's the last time we saw it. So, and that was, of course, in the show Rebels. This guy not only knows Din Djarin's name, not only describes killing all these people on Mandalore, but he has the Darksaber. I guess it's fair to say that this guy completely destroyed Mandalore.
Yeah, and it's at that point where, I imagine that whoever had it at the time, whether it was Bo-Katan or someone else who had it when Mandalore fell, had the Darksaber on them, and this guy was like, "Oh, wow," right?
Yeah.
And kept it. It would be interesting to see if there was any kind of combat with that, or if the person just fell and he just laid claim to everything he could.
It's the ultimate symbol of Mandalore, and he owns it now.
There's some resemblance to another Rebels piece. Rebels is awesome.
Rebels is awesome.
With one of our other favorite characters, and the Imperial agent.
Go on.
So, who's our big guy on the ship?
Which ship?
Talking
about on the Ghost? Oh, you're gonna be mad because I can't remember his name. And Rebels is awesome. I haven't watched it in a while.
Rebels is awesome. I haven't watched it in a while.
The
either.
guy that Ezra's always hanging out with.
Yeah.
They kind of have a love-hate kind of relationship going on.
That's the one.
What's his name?
I don't know. I asked you.
Oh, so you really don't remember either. Oh, good.
No, I was sitting here thinking about it because we're so wrapped up in Mandalorian, and I went to say it, and I was like, "Why didn't it come out?" And we have a Christmas ornament of him, and I was holding it the other day, and I said it. And
but what about him is, I guess, what I'm wondering.
So there's one major Imperial officer.
Yeah.
Who they are fighting consistently.
Yeah, the guy with the blonde sideburns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he wields the staff from his name is Zeb.
Zeb, that's right.
Zeb Aurelius.
Yeah, that's right. Those two face off.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because he had wiped out. He had been a part of wiping out that homeworld.
Yep, Zeb's
and then took that staff.
Yep.
And that was... So it kind of rings a bell, like, with that whole situation.
Oh, I forgot about all that. The symbolism of Zeb's weapons and how his people had been destroyed and scattered.
Yeah. So it's like that very similar story. Like the Empire... It's almost like they take trophies.
Yeah.
But... Not to favor the Empire, but almost in a respectable way. Like they take their trophies, and then they train themselves in it. That's what it seems like.
We saw an even better example of this, I think, when Thrawn took Ryloth, and he took Hera's family crest thing. Do you remember that? She had that thing that was the Ryloth the Twi'leks use, and he was very reverential towards it. Thrawn was.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're right. Anyway, so that ends the episode. We see the appearance of the Darksaber, which, again, confirms our worst fears that Mandalore itself has fallen. And, of course, we kind of knew that by now, because he talks about the siege of Mandalore and the Night of 1,000 Tears and all that. And the fact that they're living hidden in these underground bunkers. We kind of knew that Mandalore was gone.
Yeah, and I think some of this is to make sure that we understand he's not going to Mandalore. Like, that's not where he's headed. That's not what's coming next.
He's looking... Yeah, so let's talk about that now. So where's this show going, Tim?
He's supposed to go and find...
The Yodas!
The species.
I don't know what to think about this. I don't know if I want to see... I don't know if I'm prepared to see a planet of Yodas. And I'm not sure there is a planet of Yodas.
Yeah, I don't know how this is going to work out. I have no idea what's going to happen here.
Yeah.
And we had an interesting piece of feedback about this.
Yeah, we did, and it was are you talking about the it was a theory I kind of talked about before, that the Yodas are to the light side what the species Sith was to the dark side.
Right. Which isn't it doesn't fit along with the original Legends.
No, but again, Legends.
Nothing has to fit along exactly with what's in Legends.
Yeah.
And what what the armorer says kind of fits Legends. However, in this case, and this was one of our listeners, Megan said, and since the species, oop, not there. Let me find this part here. Just exactly that. Like they're the opposite of the Sith species. When the armorer is telling the Mandalorian about the ancient sorcerers called Jedi, it made me think that maybe the original name of Baby Yoda's species, like they were the Jedi or something like that.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting idea.
And it's because that's all Legends now. It doesn't violate canon.
Right.
But then again, the Sith race, are they even in canon?
I don't think we can talk about that.
Yeah, that's a good point. My mind went, I think, same place your mind just went.
Because I'm not sure. Yeah, because we don't know right now.
Yeah. But, all right, so that's the end of the episode and the end of the season. So we're going to do a season recap, like I said. Did you have anything you want to say right now before we kind of wrap this up?
No, I think I can do my, what I think we might see or hope to see or want to see Season 2 stuff in our recap episode.
Yeah, because honestly, I'm digesting it anyway.
Yeah.
I like the picture you sent me, though. Little Mando Yoda. Baby Yoda. He's a little murdery, like you said last episode.
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit. All right, so I think we're done. I'm just excited about the Darksaber. I thought I will say this. I thought this wrapped up the season so perfectly because it's not really a cliffhanger, but there are. I mean, the emergence of the Darksaber it leaves you interested to see what's going to happen next. It didn't leave you like, oh no, now I got to wait till. And by the way, fall is when they're releasing the next season. Fall of 2020.
I assume it'll be the same time frame. Moff Gideon. We'll talk about that later on.
Okay,
I'm excited too.
But either way, so bottom line is they left enough information, enough unanswered questions to make it look forward to the second season. But we're not, again, no cliffhanger. One question I did want to go back to: Fennec Shand. Can we assume that was Moff Gideon who walked up to her body? I know the sound was the sound of Boba Fett, but it seems like now it makes sense that it was Moff Gideon tracking the Mandalorian.
I would think so.
Yeah.
It's a little strange that he's alone walking up to her. The whole thing is kind of weird. I think it's supposed to lead us into Moff Gideon.
I think
that was the intent.
Because they don't clearly answer the question, but at the same time, maybe they're like, well, it doesn't need to be clearly answered because who else would it be? Because it's only the
and
fans.
that was and we kind of thought that all along. Like, I don't think we're gonna see Boba back in this. I don't think they're going that route.
Yeah.
So.
Well, all right. Well, with that, I think we're done. So when are we going to do this recap episode?
That's a good question.
Yeah, because now with the Mandalorian coming out every Friday, we can kind of follow our own schedule again.
Yeah.
So I guess we should say no later than next Monday.
Yeah. Yeah, we should knock it out this week, and then maybe during that time we can set up our new schedule.
All right. Well, there you have it, folks. That is our Season 8 recap, or excuse me, Season 8, Chapter 8, Season 1 recap.
Chapter 8 recap, there you go.
And I don't have anything else to say other than happy holidays. Please leave us a 5-star review. And goodbye. Say goodbye, Tim. Wait a minute. Say this is the way, Tim.
This is the way.
This is the way.
Jim. I'm Tim. Who are we?
I'm Jim.
Are you? I'm Tim.
I've spoken. Aw, Quill's dead. All right, bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Audio 1.